what I realized was in my commercial banking career, I was hitting a ceiling. I couldn't make any more money than I was making at the time. The only way I could do it is burning the candle at both ends and getting a second job to be able to, create the lifestyle that I wanted. But it finally gave me the confidence in that moment in working on as a chief operating officer of this fitness company and doing my banking career to say, okay, whoa. I can't do this anymore. I can't burn the candle at both ends. I know what I want to do. I know who I want to be. And frankly, I said, I've always wanted to be an investment banker, but I was too scared to eat what I killed. And if you don't understand, eat what you kill, eat like a lion, whatever it is, you're not closing a deal, you're not getting paid. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Going Beyond the Deal podcast. I am your host, J. Michael Fischer Jr. Now, typically, I'm hosting an interesting guest, entrepreneur, executive, high performer to talk about what makes them tick, what's made them a leader in their industry. And selfishly, because I am a student of the game, I want to learn as much as I can from these interesting individuals to find out what are they doing that's different? How do they approach business? How do they approach life? What has made them so successful, right? Because as we all know, success leaves clues. But it really comes down to me is that I'm just constantly trying to get better. Personal development and my focus on personal development actually saved my life. It took me from being in different jobs that it's funny for people to even think about that was what I used to do. I was a barista. I was a janitor. I rebuilt car alternators on an assembly line. Had a lot of jobs that are very much overlooked, right? But it taught me a lot about myself. And now I went from being one of these kind of jobs that are easily looked over to now a managing director at a bespoke investment bank. Why did that happen? Because I focused on personal development. I spent well over $100,000 of my own money to get better and to become the best version of myself. So every week I write an article on LinkedIn that has to do with personal development because I want to separate myself from an industry of people that are just typically talking about industry trends and multiples and things like that. For me, someone that's looking to grow or exit their business, I don't want to just maximize the financial impact of it. I also want them to transition effectively to the next chapter in their life. And that's why this past week I wrote an article called The Second Half Playbook. So just to set the stage for everybody, I am 43 years old. I met my wife 10 years ago in January. A couple weeks ago, on September the 5th, we celebrated my daughter's 6th birthday. I cannot believe that has already happened, that she's 6 years old. It's pretty crazy to me. But what it really started to make me think about is that inflection point that a lot of us go through when you hit that point in your 40s, right? And some people would call it a midlife crisis. And it's funny, I was pondering this and in stillness that, that I give myself the time to just think about different things. And I mentioned it to my executive mentor and I said, why am I feeling these feelings? Why does this happen? And what's funny is I start hearing about other people. I heard a podcast with Tony Robbins, and they talk about this magical moment that happens between like the ages of 40 and maybe 45, where you start to understand yourself a lot better. You start to understand what you're good at. You start to understand what you like. You start to understand what you dislike. And you start to kind of create the plan for the second part of your life. And for me, a lot of that, that thought comes from the fact that, hey, I'm 43 years old. Retirement, quote unquote, age is 65 years old. I've got 22 more years to make hay while the sun is shining, right? So I want to make sure that I'm in full alignment with what I want to do as a productive citizen of this world while producing a certain amount of vitality for myself. So I really, at 40 years old, I started to get this like weird itch. I was really successful in my commercial banking career. I was hitting all my goals. I was helping other people. I was meeting great clients. I was having a lot of fun, but I still felt like there was more for me. So I started dipping my toes into the water into other things. And I said, okay, while I'm doing this, let me just pause 1 second. I was actually very lucky for the fact that during COVID, we had this opportunity where we were home. We had a lot of time at home. We skipped those, the long commutes and everything, so I can make more time in my day. So instead of, resting on my ass and just sitting there and, putting on a couple extra pounds with some extra wine and cheese with my wife, instead I said, let me do something more. And that's when I hired a fitness coach to help me get abs for the first time. I know it sounds crazy, it sounds vain, but something for myself that was a big thing that I kind of needed in my life, right? To be able to get that confidence in myself. So I hired a fitness coach, and I had the opportunity to work for that company on top of my commercial banking career as chief operating officer and running this company and helping them come up with their processes and their procedures and their sales procedures and how to grow and how to do all these things. And I realized that I loved entrepreneurship. I loved being chief operating officer of a company. I loved putting together processes and procedures. But at the same time, I realized that I still loved helping people, namely business owners. So I was able to do that in my commercial banking career. I had a taste of that entrepreneurial world when I was, 40 something years old. And then it came this inflection point. I finally understood myself really well. I understood what I liked, what I didn't like, and what I wanted more of. And what I realized was in my commercial banking career, I was hitting a ceiling. I couldn't make any more money than I was making at the time. The only way I could do it is burning the candle at both ends and getting a second job to be able to, create the lifestyle that I wanted. But it finally gave me the confidence in that moment in working on as a chief operating officer of this fitness company and doing my banking career to say, okay, whoa. I can't do this anymore. I can't burn the candle at both ends. I know what I want to do. I know who I want to be. And frankly, I said, I've always wanted to be an investment banker, but I was too scared to eat what I killed. And if you don't understand, eat what you kill, eat like a lion, whatever it is, you're not closing a deal, you're not getting paid. How could I be in a position when I first became a father, when I first became a husband? Like, I was totally uncomfortable doing that. I was used to a cushy salary with a nice bonus at the end of the year if you hit your goals. But I wanted more. So I had to take that risk. So in this midlife transition, I just sat down and I really started to think about the things that I was good at, things that other people told me I was good at, and what I didn't enjoy. And for me, that was I loved helping clients. I loved seeing other people win just as badly as seeing myself. I saw a lot of my client base that I had had in the commercial banking world start to get to that inflection point of whether they wanted to potentially exit. And I said, this just seems like a nice natural progression for me for the second part of my career to get into investment banking. So I gave you the story of kind of what happened for me. And this is where I want you guys to start thinking about something. I want you to take a little bit more time for yourself during the week. Take 30 minutes to really reflect on where you are in your career, what you like, what you dislike, and what would be the ultimate job for you in the second half of your career, right? The second part of the game, the back nine, if you will. I hate to say that. It makes me feel a lot older than I am, right? But if you think about it, the golf analogy, the back nine of my career, I played really well the first nine, but how am I going to be like 6 under par for the second half of my career? So I hope you guys found this valuable. I hope you like these short 10-minute episodes. I want you to start, if this is something that you like, please comment, please let me know. Please follow me on LinkedIn, J. Michael Fischer Jr. Share this podcast with other people. And listen, if I can be a helpful resource to you, either personally or professionally, please don't hesitate to reach out. And let's continue to build something meaningful together. Have a good day, guys.